Every story you love, every invention that moves you, every idea you wished was yours, all began as nothing. Just a blank page with a blinking cursor, asking a simple question. What do you see? Great ideas start on Mac. Find out more on apple.com/Mac.
The detective said missing kids usually come home. What happens when they don't?
Based on a true story.
Police looking for John Gacy.
We discovered bodies. By the looks of it, they're younger men.
The things he did to those kids. He's sick.
The system failed these families.
Devil in Disguise, John Wayne Gacy. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
Do you know how many there are?
Up to you to find out.
Not much.
Hey there, welcome to Why We Roll, a tabletop role-playing game design podcast.
We're your hosts, Chris Pickett, creator of the historical fantasy game Dance Macabre, and Wythe Marshall, creator of the political sci-fi game Stillfleet.
Throughout the show, Chris and Wythe hope to amplify new creative voices. We'll chat with different TTRPG designers, focusing on the world of indie games.
We take a curious approach to game design, working through a range of mechanical and narrative questions that are pertinent to many designers, players, and GMs.
We hope to showcase fresh and even challenging ideas about what makes imagination-based games just so powerful.
Okay, let's find out why we roll.
What's up, Lex and Chris?
Hello, happy to be here.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Y'all reached out a while back and followed up, so props to y'all. It's very very easy to work with, being like, hey, you said April or you said this time, and then you come back to it. That's what we love to see, is people saying and following through it, because I wanted to be on the show. It was just the worst possible time in my life to schedule it.
Yeah. Oh, no worries. Yeah, that's the social scientist in me, and Chris also is an adept project manager. So that's something, regardless of other design abilities, we can usually email people when we say we'll email people. So
usually
people wranglers. Yeah.
But thank you. That's a very nice. That feels good. It feels good to be validated in our creation.
As long as it's not annoying. That's the the battle with journalism.
I'm
and
always
anthropology.
Forgetting stuff, so it's nice when people are like, "Hey, you said you would do this thing," and I'm like, "Yes, I did, and I'm going to fit that in."
Well, we appreciate you being here.
It's great. I love being invited to any show. It's like, oh, people want to hear what I say is really exciting. And
we absolutely want to hear what you say. Yeah. But for anybody who doesn't know you, doesn't know your work, can you give us a quick rundown? Who's Lex? What's your story?
Yeah. So my name is Lex Kim Bobrow. I'm also known as Titanomachy RPG on Twitter, Tumblr, Itch, IPR now, and other places you might see indie games. I started writing. I published my first indie game June of 2021-ish. So I'm coming up on 3 years of being an indie game designer. Before that, I did some very wacky 5e subclasses, which is how I got some traction on Twitter, because I would just do some really weird meme stuff, or I would do one of my most popular ones was a waterbender cleric that people really enjoyed. And also meme stuff like P is stored in the balls, which is a spell you can cast. And that's the vocal component too. You have to say it. So I was messing around with the component system in 5e, because I was like, actually, I quite like the component system when you actually follow it. So that's where I kind of got my start, and then kind of ventured into my own games. Started something called Caltrip Core, which is a D4 system you can use to make your own games in a few minutes if you'd like. It's free, open license, all that stuff. And it started as a joke, and it sort of became launch pad for my niche as a game designer. I've been on, people have asked me for quotes and articles. I've been on a panel about open licensing and fostering creative communities with April Kit Walsh, the author of Thirsty Sword Lesbians, Jade Dragon, Wander Home Possum Creek Games, and Viditya Valetti. That was a couple years ago at Big Bad Con. One of my proudest moments. I was like, I didn't even know April knew who I was. But the Caltrip Core was really a big thing, because I've been supporting it a lot, and people, we on my family of systems is like 240 some games and supplements. Culture Core is probably most of those. It's at least 200 of those probably, if not more. And so I just started doing TTRPGs full time now. I'm on Patreon for the first time starting in January, where I do an RPG of the month. And yeah, that's sort of my journey in the space. I did a creative writing background in college and wanted to be a writer, poet, wanted to get my MFA, but could never quite get into grad school. And now I'm grateful that I didn't, because now I have, I had a job where I could save up a lot of money, and now I'm giving this a shot. I'm nowhere near self-sustaining yet, but we're giving it the old college try, as it were.
That's awesome. Yeah. Congrats on that, by the way. That's a big step that,
thank you.
I think I speak for both of us when we say we wanted to do that. And I kind of did that a little last year, but yeah, the self-sustaining revenue stream is tough.
Yeah. I'm not nearly there at all, but that's what savings are for.
Yeah. Yeah. And it helps to have a system that people have broadly interacted with. And as you say, just have generally gotten some media attention and met a bunch of cool people who want to collaborate with you, et cetera. So we're excited to talk about all those things and really just whatever you're up to. Chris, I think you might know more of these games better, but I know Culture Core and was very excited to definitely talk about open licensing and system design. We've talked about a lot of aspects of game design, but I realize, Chris, I can't think of, we haven't spent a ton of time on like really core system design, and at least in a while.
We really haven't.
Other than our own work, really.
Yeah, so. I think the only time that we've really gotten into any kind of like core system talk is really just the first couple of episodes that we did where we were talking about Still Fleet and Dance Macabre. But that is super exciting. And we haven't talked to anybody about open licensing either, really, even though that's kind of like in the background of a lot of the things that we've been talking about on the show. But you said that Culture Core started as a joke. What was the joke? Like, kind of what led you to this point?
Yeah, so back when I was on Twitter like 24/7 every day, trying to get that follower count up, I was chatting with Maps and Quests, Eric, and it was Eli, a ghost of Eli from Mayday Roleplay, excellent AP podcast, by the way, if anyone likes that. And we were talking about like how you could do a pool system of D4s where it's, like World of Darkness, but worse, where it's just like a bunch of these pointy objects that you throw, and, you would have 4 degrees of success, and you could call it the Caltrip system. And so I think Mappy was the first one to say Caltrip system. And then later on, I was like, oh, maybe I should try building on that like funny idea. And I wrote out the little D4 table that the text is still the core of the system today, where it's, 4, you get what you want and more. 3 is you get what you want, but there's a catch. 2 is nothing happens. Or in a newer system, you can also do you don't get what you want, but you experience a benefit. And then 1, you don't get what you want and things get worse. So that sort of, you would roll the number of dice that you have as the stat, and then you would take the highest one and read that on the table, and that would be your result. And I posted like a little 1-page table on Twitter once I had it like kind of written down, and people started using it immediately. Like it was, I wasn't like, oh yeah, this is going to be what the thing I'm known for is like, oh, this is a funny thing. Cool. Like there's not a D4 system to my knowledge. And people were like, oh, I already have an idea for a game. I'm going to start doing this now. It was like at least a few people that did that. And so I was like, I can either, watch the train leave the station, or I can hop on and try to guide the community and make it a thing that's really useful and use whatever, the thing that I think I'm best at is not game design or any of that kind of like the real core stuff, is really just like trying something new and not being afraid to be bad at it. So I wanted a system that would be beginner friendly. And because as someone who has tried a lot of new things, I'm not good at them, but that's just part of trying new things. And so it's not really a scary thing for me, but it is a scary thing for a lot of people, especially when you've played tabletop games your whole life and you're like, my first tabletop game that I ever write has got to be my magnum opus. It's 600 pages. It's all lore and all this stuff. But really, it could be 1 page, which, seeing Lasers and Feelings for the first time blew my mind, of course. And Wander Home and Lumen by Spencer Campbell over at Hela RPGs were kind of like two big texts that informed Caltrip Core. It was sort of like just a little easy sampler platter of tech that someone could use, because a lot of people just don't know where to start. But if you know where to start, then it's really kind of starting is not the hardest part once you know where to start. But that's really the issue is what people don't know that. And I like to kind of roll around and fail a little bit and go scouting and figure things out for a little bit. And so I didn't have any intermediate or advanced knowledge, but I had the beginner knowledge that I was working with. And I was like, okay, I can organize this in a way and share it with people. And that's where the rest of the document comes of the SRD, is like how to use the system, how some examples, telling you, hey, it's actually not so hard to do this, and you can be a game designer. This is the tagline I think I have on the little itch.io thing is an introductory game design SRD. So it's just like meant to be something that anyone can use to make a game, and anyone has, like, and people of all skill levels. And it's kind of magical. I didn't really like foresee any of it coming, but I think putting that extra support into the document on letting people know that this is not a hard thing to use. You can use this. Here's some familiar things. You understand stats. You understand tokens if you play those types of games. And everything you need to know is on this D4 table. And I think maybe that's the magical thing that I didn't even realize, was that if you can distill the system down to a single page, then it becomes just so easy to wrap your brain around that it's like, oh yeah, of course I can use this. So it's like when you see a pair of scissors, you don't wonder how you can use it. You know what you can use scissors for because it's got the little snippy parts. It's not going to screw in anything. It's not going to build your cabinet. It's not going to fix, anything really, but it'll get you those scissors. And then maybe you add a little bit of your own tape, or maybe you add, like a lot of people like to add tech from Blades in the Dark, which I find very flattering. They find the systems very compatible, a lot of clocks and stuff. And I've started using the clocks in my own designs as well because of the people turning me on to other cool designs that they were bringing on to Caltrip Core. So it's really a system where it's very clear that I cannot take any credit for the creativity that people put on it, because my contribution is very clear and limited. It's the D4 table, and then everything else that people build on it, which is amazing to see. I was learning stuff from people going through my system, using my system, and it was a really beautiful, like, community way of learning game design, and a community, like a communal way of creating games and stories and all that stuff. That's really that really does lead into like open licensing stuff, because April, when she was getting the panel together, she said this thing. I forget if it was on the panel or just like when we were talking, but she does like human rights work, and like she's a lawyer, and so she also consults on Creative Commons, like the actual license. So they get lawyers from all over the world who consult on it, and she's one of the contributors. And she said this thing which like made me understand like why, like, licensing sounds really complicated, and because it's like a law thing, and if you're not really in tune with it, it sort of seems overwhelming. I know like 3 things about it, and that apparently makes me someone who knows something about it. But that's the thing, is it's not very hard. It's really just, so April said the way that humans create is incompatible with the laws we have around intellectual property and art. So we always want to mix with other people's. We're inspired by other people's art. Caltrip Core is a perfect example. And the reason it's important that it's open license is that people can feel comfortable knowing that they will be protected by this thing that has to exist, Creative Commons, as a tool to help us create more naturally as humans. Because that's why RPGs, it's hard to be like, oh, that person stole your idea, because it's like we all are kind of like swimming in the ideas together, playing together, testing, doing all this stuff. And that's what open licensing is really there to do, is just to bridge that gap between, well, if you own this IP, then no one else can use it without your permission, and by paying you and all this legal money stuff, it's greed. And whoever owns the means of production that wants to keep their piece of the pie, right? So open licensing is also a radical way of publishing, so that you can spread it without having the limitation of greed or capital or whatever. And people have been able to make money by selling games they've made with my system. It's probably not a lot of money, but it's still something. And so I've told people it's sort of, it is one way of giving people access to the means of production by demystifying RPGs as a form, as an art form, where D&D wants you to think that you need to write a 300-page books to have an RPG, and they all have to have a $40 price tag or whatever that is nowadays. But once you realize, actually, role-playing games can be distilled into a single table, or even just a rule about respecting other people's choices. Like that's all you would need. And they don't want you to have that, but you can, if you don't believe that you can make a game, then they continue to take your money, right? So if we can show people that making games is not only a lot easier than they thought, it's more fun than they probably thought, and you can actually, people are very generous in the indie games community. They always, at least from what I've seen, most of the people, they give more than the asking price, and I try to do that whenever I can. And it's a cool community to be a part of. And that's what open licensing and some of the SRDs, which there's a lot of new ones now that you can use to build any type of game you want. That's, I think, is a really special thing in the tabletop gaming space.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that little summary of like why we can use different kinds of licensing and publishing to not only make fun games, but in a way change how we interact with each other, which I think is really important. And it's really nice to be thoughtful, and it doesn't require, as you're saying, a lot of specialist knowledge or like tons of time or resources.
I accidentally did it twice. I accidentally made Couch Report. I accidentally became an authority on open licensing. Just do cool stuff and be generous with people, and things can work out. I'm not going to say always, but it has worked for me.
There you go. You heard it here first. No, I love all of this. Like, just to echo what White said, just even changing the framework that we see around that we see this work through, I think is so important. And the work that you're doing with open licensing and just demystifying and creating more accessibility it's so beautiful. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because we can talk about IP. In part, I know about this because I've taught a lot about the history of biotechnology, which is all about IP, and it's really funny to think about all these things like big companies saying they need different kinds of IP actually to be opened up in order to make money. So it's not always the case that everyone has been super focused on like patents as a way to constrain, fight off competition, and especially with copyright, like with games, you can't. Or I think only Richard Garfield has ever patented anything, and even that was completely unenforceable because people just stopped using the word tap and started making exact versions of magic that weren't magic, but just without saying tap, and that gets around the whole patent. So
yeah, you got to flub your location cards to get your spell points.
You got to lube those location cards.
You got to
lube them right and left. Yeah, but it's more actually, I think, interesting to think about indie RPGs in terms of what it does positively. So instead of fighting off a horde of competitors for this huge amount of money we're all making, which that's not a thing. It's it makes you actually systematize something and give it away to people and promote it a little bit, right? Because I mean, in a way, it's why would you go to the work of making it sort of official if otherwise. So it actually, I think, helps speed ideas getting out there. And because it can require, you can have versions like attribution where someone can use your work, but they should credit you. It can kind of help that more, I think of the Kula ring in anthropology, right? It's the circle of giving kind of economy, as opposed to everyone vying for what they perceive to be their slice of the pie. So it is just like you're saying, Lex, just, trying to get people to normalize a different way of creating games overall, writing them, talking about them, playing them. So that is cool that you stumbled into it, and that that's the people have responded to Caltrip.
Yeah, it's truly, I'm really grateful.
Can you say a little bit about the process of, so what happened next basically? So, have you been since Caltrip, have you been focused on both kind of doing more Caltrip, but also I'm guessing doing some other things because you didn't ever intend, as you say, for that to be your only sort of game design work. And what are just some highlights? Like, I don't know, some fun moments, either, games you've created with Caltrip Core or just games you've heard about or played in, anything you want to sort of shout out from like that era of people discovering the system and getting excited about it.
Yeah. So, Caltrip Core released and I started working on a game built on it. And since it was going to be my first release on my system, I wanted to take the time to really think through it and make something that I felt would be a good like representative of the system to show what it can do, what kind of things you can say with it, and even just seeing if it worked at all as a fun system. And I think it's probably still my most popular game to date is Nighthawks, which is based off of the painting by Edward Hopper of those people in the diner, and it's quiet. It's from the 40s, and it's a very like kind of lonely atmosphere. And all of Hopper's paintings, or a lot of them anyway, have that same feeling, which is it's sort of this like bittersweet, like that feeling when you're like maybe when you're young and you're out at a bar by yourself and you're, it's that line from Piano Man is they're sharing a drink they call loneliness, but it's better than drinking alone. And the game I wanted to, so I wrote it ended up being about loneliness. And I really didn't even know if that was a fun game to play. Is that a game worth playing? And the first time I tested it, the answer was clearly yes. I was like, okay, there is something here. This is the doubts that I had were valid, I think, because you always want to be like, is this game even fun? Like, if it's just a downer, then I don't really want to. There's certain games but they're few and far between, right? You don't want to be playing that every time. And Nighthawks can be intense for sure, but it's not a downer. It's like if you play it the way a lot of people have, you can really start to make some genuine connections with people through these character choices. And it's some of my favorite sessions of tabletop games ever were playing my game, Nighthawks. I played with it was part of the Prayers in the Static series with Tales Yet Told, with Kendo Makes Films and Ibrahim over there, and then also Glitchy Pixie Gwen, who's a wonderful creator, who's also one of the first people to make a game on Caltrip Core as well. She's fabulous. But that session that we played, it's on Twitch as a VOD. Like I afterwards I had to like take a break from like being a person. It was like the bleed was pretty. It's actually that session that led me to writing a little page on bleed in the book because it was so intense. But I'm really proud of that work, and it's my first print one. So it's I just sent it to IPR, so it's available online at indiepressrevolution.com if you want to get Nighthawks. I have the soft covers up there. They're $12. They're real inexpensive, and people have been buying them up. Lev from Mayday Roleplay sent me a picture of them right outside of their local game store with the book, and I was like, "Holy crap! It's in the real world. It's so cool." So that's I'm really proud of that, and that game does really represent a lot of what I want to do with games, and it accomplishes a lot of sort of real emotion. It kind of guides you towards that emotion if you want it.
Yeah. The thing that strikes me about I haven't read through Nighthawks, but I'm excited to pick up a copy. But the thing that strikes me, even as just you're explaining it, is that it mirrors kind of what has happened with Caltrop Core anyway, which is you're moving from a state of alienation and loneliness into a state of communication and possible community and things like that. So I don't know. It's really interesting. I don't know if that was an intended effect or not, or if it's a happy accident.
Yeah, maybe that's just the journey we're all trying to get on.
I think you might be right.
I think you were like you just casually drop an axiomatic like thing of how existence and like arguably one of the best ways to live, which is trying to connect with people on a real emotional level, and just applied it to anything, which that applies to pretty much everything. I think you might be enlightened. So
back at you.
Enjoy that.
We were just talking about before we started taping about The Agony of Eros by Byung-Chul Han, which Chris recommended I read, which I just started, and it's already it's like a 60-page book about essentially connection and loneliness, alterity, not just love in the romantic sense, but like connection with people and like what's different today and what's up with like social media and technology. And is that bad? It's like, spoiler, it's bad. But it's really profound. And if we're just saying for a book that's 60 pages, it's like, goddamn, every page is a banger. Like you got to throw it down and just think about it,
Yeah. I love those. That's
anyway,
my favorite RPG too.
Yeah. It makes
it game that's just all bangers.
Yeah. I get that. I get that sense for sure.
Yeah.
That's why I love like Hela RPGs with Spencer's doing all those like cool solo games that are based on the Souls-like games. I have a copy of Reap that's like a Necromancer solo one, and like Slayers and all the classics that he did. Those that really influenced mine too. And then of course Jay, Wanderhome is a pretty thick book, but it looks nothing like other RPG books. And so those two were really instrumental in the development of Couch Report, because it was sort of like, okay, me seeing some people who I consider like lighthouses in the scene when I first came on, and still they are, and finding that, because when you first start, you don't know what you don't know. You're like, how do I even? There's a few tabletop gaming. There's a few gaming game design textbooks, but not specifically tabletop RPGs, unless you go to like some specific blogs that you have to know about by being in the community and checking out the OSR blogs, which are that's where I get a lot of my tech and knowledge. And the Possum Creek Games one is great. Jay Dragon does an amazing job with explaining game design and Jay's view on things. So if you're looking for a text, is just all the Possum Creek blog posts and stuff.
That's way better than the stuff that I found when I first started writing, which I think the only book I've ever seen that's specifically about TTRPG design is the Kobold's Guide to TTRPG design. I wouldn't recommend it. It's very grognardy. But that, it's a personal preference thing.
Right. I come from the new school, so like I don't have I started playing with 5e basically, and then kind of branched off to do my own thing. So I don't have the old school view, and for some things it's really cool, because it's like, all right, you're coming fresh with a new perspective, you do something, and then you think it's like kind of cool, like Couch Record. It's like, oh, I wrote a cool D4 table, and then everyone goes, actually, this is something special. And that's really great. But it also means that I don't have a lot of the legacy knowledge of what came before us and like what people have liked and didn't like. For example, my understanding is that in the 90s, World of Darkness games were all the rage, White Wolf and like Vampire the Masquerade. I played Demon the Fallout. I've played a campaign, currently trying to get it back up and running. And I love that. So it's taken me time to sort of dig into the annals. It's not really an old hobby, but still, like, there's like from the 80s to now, I guess now that's like 40 years, which is not nothing. And you have to strike that balance of reading your contemporaries' work and then reading the classics.
I mean, it depends what you want, right? But yeah, I definitely think as a sort of student of games, it's fun to read, ecumenically, and to think about these different eras and what's changed. It's really funny to hear you say like you're coming in with the idea of making these very lightweight games, which obviously are fun and have a lot of resonance. But it's like I came in wanting to make, like, I grew up playing Vampire in those games, and wanted to make like a 300-page book with a lot of lore. Yeah. But it's fun. It's fun. I mean, both are fun. And I think to some degree, it's also like what kind of writer, like what kind of stuff you're up to. Yeah. But there's definitely been changes. And like audience has shifted, and like what people sort of how they pay attention and how they're willing to try stuff. But there are still some threads, because I was thinking we talked, actually, we were very fortunate to talk to Mark Diaz Truman of Magpie Games, who's written a lot of stuff I've liked. And there's a number of writers like that who, like, I was like, oh, I want to like make games like that, who are writing these like longer evocative settings, but I thought were just like, oh, this seems fun. But I think regardless of what it is, it's sort of a question of, as you were talking about at the beginning, like feeling the authority, the license to do it. So I also really liked that you were underlining, like, whatever you want to do, you can definitely start smaller. Like you could do, a 20-page, or like a 4-page or a 1-page thing. But also, like, no one can stop you, whatever it is. Yeah. No one could stop you. You can just make the game. And yeah, just to your point about the historical part, there are so many systems that have been tried, but it's also one of the fun, interesting things about just like evolution, like emergence in general, is that, like, it's not that thing that on their own systems are good or bad. Like rolling a bunch of D10s or D6s or D4s could be fun, or it could feel like it's not fun. And to some degree, it's like, yeah, your audience. What do you like? What do your friends like? How much table space do you have? And I think these things come in and out. There's like fads, right? But I don't think I definitely don't think World of Darkness is like a bad system, but I also totally get that like it's such a 90s, like all those books are very, very 90s in a fun way. But
I enjoy them, but they're very different from what I'm known for. It's sort of the opposite of Caltrip Core. But I love when you want a system like that where you want to put dots in 60 different attributes and you want to build your character, you want to go into the flaws and you want to build your apocalyptic form and you want to build the human that you were before you got possessed or / fused with this demon thing. It's lots of fun. But a lot of people think that their first game has to be one of these things. And there's no reason that people think this. It's sort of just like when you're thinking of making your own thing, you think of your favorite thing, right? So if you're thinking of I want to make a video game, my favorite video game is Skyrim. It's well, your first video game shouldn't try to make Skyrim. You could try to make an easy RPG. Maybe you do a turn-based RPG so you can get RPG elements down, and then you start, with a little 3D modeling to get a little environment go. You take baby steps, but it doesn't mean that one's better than the other. In fact, I used RenP, which is the system that Doki Doki Literature Club is built on, and I wrote just a very experimental short visual novel on that system because it's also very easy to use. Lots of resources online for when you don't know any code like I do. People will be like, hey, here's the bit of code, copy paste. Thank you very much. I did a bunch of pixel art for it, and it's a short thing. I imported some old poetry of mine, and I posted it on itch, and it's maybe one day I'll make a really dope RPG, video game, and have all these cool pixel art elements that I've always wanted. But for now, I learned how to do a pretty basic visual novel with some branching paths, a couple endings, and a consistent visual style. And I'm proud of that. That's where you just get started. It feels like the Caltrip Core of visual novel or video game making. And I think that entry level, so anyone who can provide that, and that's also open license, by the way, anyone who can provide those things is doing a great service to people, because so many people want to create something. So many people have the ideas, and it's not that people don't have follow through, although a lot of people don't have follow through, but I think a lot of people really want to work at it, and they are just kind of going at it from an angle that is not working for them. It's not even that it would be a bad angle necessarily. Maybe someone else would do fine writing 100 pages of lore before touching any mechanics. Maybe that's not how you will design a game. I kind of do a little bit of layout in my small games to get a visual feel of the vibe. Hexfall was all the vibes because it was during a game jam and I didn't really have an idea. So I just I made some vibes and built the game around it. It was a difficult way of making a game, but I was able to do it. And that game, because of that, I think, and other reasons, that game turned out more like a poem than anything. It sort of doesn't have a lot of goals. It's sort of a meditation on suicidal ideation and living and cool pixel art and weird playbooks. And it was just what I needed to make at the time. And, sometimes you just need to make something for you, and it'll take off or it won't. But I can tell you that just continuing to make stuff increases your chances of just hitting something that people will resonate with. Totally. So you just keep making, Titanomachy RPG is not my first project online. I was thinking about it the other day. I was actually, I had a blog in college where I would post little corkboard messages of hope. And it was also Christian at the time. So it was kind of that too. But then I had a letter project that was, I would write a monthly letter to people pretending like it was a personal letter, but I had up with 1,000 readers on it, and was just about mental health, and then also social justice. Because then, the George Floyd murder happened while that project was going on. So I was writing about that, and also using it to sort of figure out my own feelings and write down things that I needed to remember about what was going on. And then I had these 5e things. So it was actually it's a long time of just creating things over and over again. I think it's easy to see especially when you see someone who's really young and it's really successful, who, you get those wonderkins out there, not me, but, people out there. It's easy to be oh man, I've come this far. I'm, 31 or whatever. And I haven't done this thing. I'm not under 30 anymore. So I can't accomplish anything according to Forbes and all this, all this stuff. But what you don't see is sometimes that person who's for example, Kane Pixels, who went viral at 16 for the Backrooms films, he was making films for a long time before that and honing his skills. It wasn't his first time at bat, you know? So even young people, they just have the benefit of like, if you started at 6 and you go to 16, that's 10 years of some of the fastest learning years of your life. So you have an advantage there. But I'm realizing now that I'll be 32 in May next month. It's actually, if you just do something a lot every day or every so often, you will get better at it much faster than you think you will. And as long as you keep saying yes to trying it instead of saying no because you're afraid of being bad at it, just keep trying, and you actually do just eventually get better at stuff. And I think that's one of the really magical things about being human is like, I really enjoy intuitively understanding stuff. So if I just experience it over and over again, it ends up that intuition just kind of builds. Your brain is capable of some amazing things. Yeah. And, you know, people like, I think I heard, you know, there's those old, like Van Gogh or Picasso, one of those great painters didn't start until like they were 35. Yeah. And all these, there's some people who just start till they were 80. You know, these stories when you're in your 20s and 30s feeling like you haven't done anything with your life yet. It's like, okay, there's still time. And actually you can get really good at stuff really fast if you practice like in a way that your brain likes. Yeah. You know, I'm not going to say that everyone has to do something every day because that's not feasible with a lot of people's brains. No. But if you can find the way that your brain likes to do something and just keep doing it, you're going to get so good at it so fast. Like, so for example, a couple of years ago, I just like started doing watercolor every day. I really like watercolor painting. I'm not like a visual artist by trade. I did a lot of drawing as a kid, but that's it. And for like a couple of months I decided to do a watercolor painting every day, a small one, shitty one, whatever it was. And then like in a few months, I like went for like an idea that I had that I was like, I'm not good enough for this yet, but I went for it after practicing like 3 months and I was able to like get it. And it's still like kind of the peak of where after that I kind of trailed off. And so I have that painting. But I was really impressed with how fast I got better at it by doing it every day. And then I also like, I watched like 1 or 2 drawing courses online where like someone who knew what they were doing was like, hey, draw the general shape of the thing and then fill in the details as you go and sort of slowly work your way in. And whenever I take the time to do that method, it always turns out better. So there's that mix of like learning from others and then like doing it yourself over and over again. And that sort of interplay is something I really enjoy personally.
Thanks so much for listening to Why We Roll. If you like what you hear, you can support us at patreon.com/Stillfleet. Patrons get access to all kinds of extra material for all of our games, starting with Stillfleet, but now including Blister Critters, of course Danse Macabre, The Sometimes Kingdom, and hey, we're always working on new stuff. So check us out at patreon.com/Stillfleet.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's something I've heard other illustrators refer to as the taste curve, which is that when you start a project or you start, you know, a new endeavor or whatever, you know, in your case, watercolor, you can look at painters from the past and be like, oh man, that's so good. And your taste is higher than your current talent. Right. Mm-hmm. So you look at the things that you're doing, and you're like, this sucks, blah, blah, blah. I'll never get as good as Van Gogh. I'll never be as good as, you know, X, Y, or Z, anybody that you appreciate. But it really is just about like the consistency and keeping at it. And eventually you get to a point where your taste matches, you know, whatever. I don't think talent's a good word for it, but your practice. Ability. That's a great word for it.
I mean, I think a lot of this is tricking your mind too. And then not, if you're trying to consciously like day one, you're like, cool, now I'm going to be Van Gogh. There's going to be like a dissonance between your aims and your competence. But like, if you can just have fun with it, as you're saying, and discover the forms and discover procedures, or like, I think about game design, it's funny you're saying these things and they echo so much with me. Like I did write a bunch of lore and then was like, oh no, I can't, like my first game's not going to be as good as I thought. And then set it aside. And then on my phone wrote like the mechanical basis of what I thought was maybe something different that ended up, it all merged together eventually, you know? Mm-hmm. But it was like having those moments of like, what's fun in the moment and what can be particularized or broken down, or like, oh, maybe there is work that can be reused. And that I think has a lot of resonance probably across whether we're talking about writing or art or like, the mechanical components of game design. But as opposed to saying you have to do it all at once, you have to sit down like by Friday, I mean, game jams are fun to make you do stuff, but they can be a little intimidating for that reason, right?
Yeah.
Of like, oh no, I only have however many days.
It's really about like enjoying the procedure, enjoying your time going through it. And so instead of doing what you think you should do what you want to do. And then you'll eventually come back around to the things you should do because you're like, oh, that's what I need to make the thing I like doing even better. You got to eat your vegetables is what I call it sometimes. It's like whether it's with like fighting games, which I recently got into, it's like, okay, well, I can play a lot or I can go back and watch tape, which is painful because I'm bad and I don't like watching myself lose. But sometimes you got to eat your vegetables. And when you get enough into the part that you like, you'll eat the vegetables because you got deep enough that you love the project now. And you're like, I want it to be as good as it possibly can be. And you'll go do that other thing generally. I don't know. That's been my experience of working with in creative stuff.
Yeah, I think that echoes my experience and probably a lot of people's for sure. I mean, this is all reminding me of one of my favorite dumb old person phrases, which is, do you know how to get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. That's it.
There's a similar one that we use when we were moving, especially. I forget where I heard it, but it's how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so, it's like, it could be the biggest thing in the world, but you take those, and then the old, I think I don't know if it's Confucius, but the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Yeah,
all those.
That might have been Mariah Carey.
Was it?
No, I thought that was Buddha.
No.
I think it's Mariah Carey. I think I learned.
I think we learned. Yeah, she's one of the transcendental bodhisattvas who comes through time and space every now and again. I mean, it
makes a lot of sense.
Like in Zen, there's like in medieval Japan, there was a tradition of like archery where you didn't even get an arrow for like years. Like you just practiced pulling the bow over and over again with no arrow, and then eventually when you get the arrow, it was supposed to be like, well, you're gonna hit it, like. But I don't know. Yeah, that might be a little bit of a deeper. Right. I don't know if that works.
I think the big thing that I also want to impart to people is that, like, not only being like, okay, being bad at something is part of the process, blah blah, but like just being like, this thing I made is bad and that's okay. Like this thing I made is crappy. You can like things about it. You can enjoy things, but like being able to say like, hey, this is bad. It's okay. We'll put it away for a little bit. So for example, I think it was the first game jam I held. I made a game called Table Fighter CC Melodrama of 10,000 Lovers Turn Fighters. And it was supposed to be, I was like going to see if Caltrip Core could support like a fighting game style mechanic. And so I wrote a bunch of D4 tables for each different move and went to go try to test it with my partner. And it was borderline unplayable. We were able to play it after I had sort of like hacked off some pieces or whatever. And I still haven't gone back to that game, but I do think it was like an important learning step. And then also I do have ideas for like porting it to one of my other systems and trying something that way. But it was good for me to do at the time because it showed me what my system could and couldn't do. And a lot of fighting game fans liked reading it. They thought it was really cool and they enjoyed the mechanics and what I was going for. It was just when I went to actually play the thing, it didn't work so well.
Well, this gets actually, I have two questions that I want to ask. And Chris, I know we have to be mindful of time too. And I know you probably have thoughts as well. But I really want to get to politics of games and games as politics. But before that, I mean, you've just mentioned a few times and it definitely like people constantly talk to me about video games and Souls likes and all these things. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm sitting here reading novels and philosophy. But I did grow up playing JRPGs and fighting games. So those I know, like 90s things that were cool when it was a really shitty system. But I noticed like a thread through your work. I mean, I see like pixel art and you've referenced fighting games. So, I mean, maybe that's more just generally a question of inspiration, but what are some of the linkages or things you find, touch points you find either, maybe it's games, maybe it's movies. But it does feel like there is a specific style of video game because even the art, like you're not using a lot of like ye olde line art, like fantasy stuff, right? A lot of it is this kind of 3D. It looks like it's like a PlayStation game that never actually existed. Like, Hexfall is a great example. Like I want to play this and be the paper sworn and like explore this weird world.
I was going to say a lot of it feels like Tekken. To me, like the visual, the aesthetic of Tekken kind of like echoes through the work, which I really like.
I didn't see that. Yeah, I remember being a kid and like going to the arcade, and Tekken 3 was like the hot new stuff.
Oh yeah,
and being at the arcade and being like, this dude has a jaguar head and he does these cool throws. If I can figure out how to do a throw, this would be great. I think I grew up like playing a lot of Game Boy Advance games. I was a big handheld kid. And like GameCube after a little bit, and that sort of style is just timeless to me. I'll play Sea of Stars, that recent JRPG that came out. Like
very good.
That very good.
It's very good.
I love that vibe, and I enjoy. It's also for me like I'm not a good like visual artist. I don't have like a tablet or anything that I can like do digital art. Like Cassie Mouthwin does all her own or their own. I'm not sure. I don't remember pronouns right now. I think it's she, her right now. With her own games and like illustrating these beautiful folk horror settings and these like tangled blessings and these like beautiful skulls and flowers. Amazing artists. So a lot of people who do TTRPGs, well, not a lot, I guess some people who do them can also do their own art, which I find really cool, because sometimes you can't afford to pay an artist well to help you. And sometimes you want to use some, open license art, Wikimedia Commons, Unsplash, you want to use a mix of everything. And I figured if I could also do my own art, which I was into pixel art for a bit. And I was like, well, I could just do something here and it'll be fun. It'll be kind of the aesthetic that I like in my games. I always get, anytime I see a pixel art game, like a new pixel art indie game, I'm interested. I'll check it out. And yeah, I think because I did a lot of video games before I started playing tabletop games. So I didn't start tabletop games. I think probably 2018. I started playing 5e. So before that was a lot of platformer games, and I always admired fighting game players. And growing up, so I like always was watching stuff, but never played until recently. Like about a year or two ago, I was like decided to like actually get into it and learn it and do it right. And that's been very fun. And so the inspirations and learning from that, anything I'm learning, I want to put into games, because anytime I'm learning, I'm excited. It's like I'm happy with new information, and it just finds its way into weird new games. The more weird stuff that I can mash together, the more shit posts that become games, because that's kind of, it's just all sort of been, I released a game recently called Kafka's Cheeseburger, and it's a solo journaling game about a cheeseburger that appears in your home one day, and it gets bigger and bigger until you die, and or you decide what the burger means. And that's just, I have a literature background as well. I did creative writing in college, poetry. So it's like, yeah, we mix all these things together. I think a lot of what I enjoy about indie TTRPGs is how weird the ideas get. The things that people come up with are just so delightfully strange, things that I never would have thought of putting together in a million years. And that just, I have all these games that I bought, I can open up any of these and just find the most wacky, like, for example, I was reading the quick start guide for Stillfleet, the Mournfolk, which is like the most me thing in the whole world.
I love the Mournfolk so much.
I want to hear more about that for a second.
Plays a Mournfolk.
I play a Mournfolk, and it is so, oh God, it's so good.
I need to hear a little bit about it now. I know we're like, I'm the guest on the thing, but I came here wanting to know more about the Mournfolk.
Well, wife, take it away.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, I mean, that was an abrupt, but no, I'm happy to talk about the Mournfolk. So in the lore of the hundreds of pages or whatever,
we got it. We love it.
There is a planet that was a habitable Earth-like world. The archivists think all somehow seeded from a Terran diaspora, but they can't prove it. And the life that arose there seemed humanoid, but eventually surpassed its own biological limits. And basically everyone was sort of a mist of bluish nanites. And so they were called by the void miners Sapphire Elves. And the Sapphire Elves had this, very sort of green and blue, beautiful world. Everything, the plants there are all non-vascular and just kind of grow in big heaps. So it's basically moss. There's like giant mounds of moss, but they're, how big could moss get? So it's like a house size, just blob of green. And the elves kind of had this very high-tech society they'd built, but they eventually fought a civil war so bad they almost all went extinct. And the remaining Sapphire Elves all decided to merge and become the Mournfolk. So they all divvied up into twos, and each of them fused completely, body and consciousness, into one body with two faces. So sort of a Janus, like front and back, but one body. And the idea is that they also gave up technology. Most of the Mournfolk just are like out there chilling in the woods, like they're just philosophers or they're all dead or whatever. So it is like this whole thing, like you brought up, eventually with some sci-fi tropes, you hit these points. Xixin Liu explores this in the later books of the Remembrance of Earth's Past or whatever. But like, if you're going to live forever because you're so technologically advanced, don't you at some point become bored? Do you just like kill yourself? Like, what do you do? But the Mournfolk you would play in the game are ones who've come to the company's home, Spindle, and they've just lived so long. They like don't necessarily remember all the high tech stuff they used to know, and they're also different because they're not two people. They're like one person made out of what was two people. And so I've had players because it's very loose. It's a one paragraph. Like I boiled all that down to like one paragraph, right, in the game. And so like Chris read it, and Chris made Svarm, right? I think is your character's name. And I've had all different kinds. Like I've had people play kind of the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde trope, but most people don't actually. Most people take a very different they are mourning. They're in professional mourning for their whole civilization forever. Yeah. And that was a thing they all agreed on. And so it's almost like if the United Nations worked and everybody was like looking at each other, just crying like, my bad, dog, my bad, and just hugged it out to like the nth degree. So it's a philosophical trope. It's a joke. It's a serious expert. It's all those things. But at the end of the day, as a game designer, it's like it's one page in a book with a one paragraph description and one piece of art and some like bullet pointed powers.
Yeah, and that people can take that seed and sort of create their own wonderful stories that they'll remember. We still tell stories. I recently was Big Bad Con online was like connecting like POC and queer designers with people in the industry. So I had like a quick meeting with Ivan Van Norman, and he was talking about. Sorry, my brain just totally zapped. What were you saying first?
I was just talking about how maybe you take a big idea, but in the end, it's like, one paragraph or one page. And I think you were saying maybe something about that, like some experiences with sort of boiling down big ideas or how they get used by others. Maybe not, though. I don't know.
I was like, I don't want to be the person who just name drops for no reason. And then I cannot remember why I brought that person up is like the worst thing to do. No,
you're all good. You're all good.
Yeah. But like, that's the cool thing is what we, though I really just enjoy the weird stuff that really comes up in this place because you have stuff like that where it's the Mournfolk feels like something I should have always known. It feels like it belongs, like I need to like license it into one of my books or something. And that's the thing, we like are creating these really weird things and yet still connecting and finding fresh new ways of thinking about like play and like people and characters and all this stuff. And like story is really hard. So playing with people is one of those things that's really special about tabletop games. Where you are able to kind of hive mind and everybody's best ideas come out and something that you never would have thought of that just changes your life happens in the session. And I think that's why I really love working with tabletop games, even though I myself am sort of an introvert and find it hard to like be in a lot of games or even like get together with people sometimes. It's still like I'm trying to understand the magic of collective storytelling, which is something like, which, that's what we do in our games, but also it's kind of echoes the open licensing conversation of how we create together. You don't try to like if someone drew your character from your session, you wouldn't be like, that's my character, don't steal. You'd be like, oh my God, thank you for this beautiful art of my character. Unfortunately, you do have, like in the real world, corporations will steal your art and try to use it for their own stuff. So you have to say, hey, this is my character, do not steal. So that's not the ideal world we live in. But in the best case scenarios, we're working with each other with some people that we know and can talk to and can tell stories with and all this stuff, do life with, and just like creating together in the game, outside the game, on top of a game, under a game, all that stuff is, I think that's where like I've tried a lot of different types of writing, and game design right now is the one that's really holding my attention for the past few years, because there's just so much that there's just so much stuff that people can really surprise you in so many beautiful ways.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a kind of lightness. It's a kind of tool making that feels like you're doing something active that people use, but it's also something you could pick up, put down, experiment, trade. It doesn't have the heaviness maybe of some of the work we do for pay, or even like the kind of fine artistry of like, I'm going to write my novel. That's like, that's great. And that's cool. And that's an inner expression, but it's a little different than like we as a group are going to make a fun story together. And then, I don't know, go have nachos or whatever. I do want to ask about politics, but Chris, I feel like you have thoughts, and I don't want to be, hogging the mic.
No, I mean, I'm also very, very excited to hear about politics in terms of open license and things like that. No, let's jump into it. I'm here for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we just, one of the things I think that Chris and I talk about a lot, and that with some of our guests we've talked about is like, and maybe you'd alluded to some of this, Lex, and I don't want, please say whatever you think or you don't want to say, but it's like we live in a really profoundly shitty moment. But I guess probably the whole history of the United States, I mean, a lot of the whole history of the world is that. And I think it's great that games are giving people a chance to do like escapist fun with friends, but I think they also can have a place to like curate or foster different kinds of discussions, or even allow people to like try out being other, and like being different than how they are at work or with family or whatever. But I don't know. Those are some of the things that we talk about when we say like maybe games have a political dimension and that's actually like a good thing. Or maybe it's something we can design for and not just assume all games are just escapist, but it feels like something maybe you would have a perspective on. And yeah, maybe related to, for one, all the things you mentioned around creating, an SRD and an open license. But there's other aspects to it as well. So again, it's kind of an open, big question, but politics and games, question mark.
Absolutely. I think, so you mentioned writing a novel, like I did that in undergrad. I took a novel course and then did like what's it called when you like independent study with my novel professor to do another draft of it, and did another draft of it after leaving college. And it does take a lot to just sort of like sit down and start and work on it for the night. Like it requires so much momentum. And I think I have like 4 or 5 drafts at this point and still haven't really gotten it down. But then I also did poetry in undergrad, kind of like they opened up the program. I was in fiction, so I wasn't on that track, but they opened it up, and I took it, my first poetry class, and fell in love with it. So I did all of the poetry workshops. And, the process, regardless of what genre, the process of like writing and being an artist and like creating things intentionally and like spending your time, like I would describe most of my time I spend creating. Even if I'm like taking off of my day TTRPG work, I'll find something else to tinker with. I'm always like making something. And so we say, oh, well, are games political? Well, is art political? Art can be political. Art can just serve a corporate, regime or whatever. Those would, I guess, technically still be considered art by very strict, very like loose definitions where you can't get me to say that, it's not art, but it is, but it's bad, and it's bad for us. But I think with games are, I've said this, I've sort of had this idea recently, and I'm still developing it, but games as economies of meaning is the sort of phrase that I wrote down, because if have you tried writing a novel? Have either of you tried writing a novel, or do any big projects like that?
Not a novel. I mean, other big projects, but definitely not a novel. That's
like a longer film, or like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, I did an MFA and I had a similar experience to what you're saying. I mean, I wrote a half a novel that was pretty good, and then I wrote a different half a novel that's pretty good, and then I didn't finish either when I actually, then I was like, I needed more time, and I was back working a day job, and it wasn't really the day job at all. It was more like a mental shift. And some people blame it on, I mean, there are problems with like grad school or whatever, but it wasn't really so much like, the MFA. It was like a maturity thing. And also, like you're saying, like, I don't know, like for games, for me, have been a really satisfying way to like write things that have that, cycle with other people. And I'll say the same thing about like social science or anything where you're doing sort of work that is about people and with people. But I love novels. I read them. And one day I always think like, yeah, I'm going to like sit down and write one, but it somehow has never happened. So no, I've never finished.
Well, the reason I bring it up is I found that fiction, at least for me, always had a thesis involved, like, because the way you end a story will necessarily color all the events of the story that happened before that, and then you're making an argument about how the world is or should be. And I find that games do that even more efficiently. And I'm not saying efficiently as better or worse, but just more efficiently than novels, because they sort of lay bare the values in the mechanics if they're kind of designed with the world in mind. So you can say a lot of things, like expressive mechanics, almost like Nighthawks is a really good example. It's almost heavy-handed. Like there's a connection die, and when it's a D4, it's 1 through 4, and if it ticks down below 1, goes to 0, then you are out for that night. You can no longer use the reach out to someone action unless someone uses that action on you, or you bring your die back up to 1. And that sort of, not only is that a quote unquote penalty for, crossing the bounds of what your connection die should be, it also represents like when you're in that space, it's extremely difficult to reach out to someone else. You actually can't. It feels so bad but that's when you need to do it the most, right? And that's sort of the irony of being lonely and isolating yourself. And so someone else can come in and say, hey, what's going on? Or at least say, hey, here's a drink. Let's go play some pool, whatever it is. And then you gain access to that action again. And little examples like that, you can really, really express, at least I found that you can express a lot of complex ideas in the way that you write your games, like the mechanics themselves. What are you rewarding? What are you disincentivizing? And are you portraying those incentive systems as good or bad or neutral or nuanced or whatever it is? So it's like, yes, you could have a game about bad people doing bad things, and hopefully you would be like, the game itself would sort of show you through its mechanics that this is all bad. Like it shouldn't glorify, or this is my opinion, it shouldn't glorify these evil actions, whatever they may be. And I'm sure that's sort of kind of where I guess more debate lies. But in general, I think people are in favor of good and not in favor of evil. So that's sort of using those terms.
What one would hope.
I don't know, man. A lot of RPGs are still pretty much like the
colonizing.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say the humans and the fair-skinned elves go to fight the monsters.
Dark, ugly.
The drow.
So I guess I could stand to talk about it more, but I think it's an exciting place to play because it's for me it's similar. It's on this like spectrum of like it's similar to a novel, except the novel is like on the other side where the author is making all the narrative choices. And then on the other side, you have like a tabletop RPG where you have the participants or the readers making all the choices. And it's sort of, they communicate in similar ways.
Yeah, they do. But yeah, that kind of spirit of, I don't know, I guess a kind of community or communalism might not be the right word for this, but
valuing other people.
Yeah, just valuing other people. But like, I don't know, like diffusing it away from just the author's voice and like allowing other people to interpret that. And even if you still have like, ludonarrative concerns that you're addressing with your mechanics, right, like at least it engages in communication with other people. At least you're bringing other people to the table. So I think there is a distinct difference there.
Yeah, and the letting people play in your world is a way of testing your thesis in a way. Sure. Like if you say this is a game about this XYZ and you have this argument and you can get, and let's say you've tested it so that the game does play to that argument. When people join the game where you're not at the table, they will start playing in the world. And I think it would be considered a success if they kind of take away what you intended for them to take away, as far as like, I don't like the term the moral of the story, but sort of like what what did you get them to think about that they hadn't thought about before? Because I remember having a lot of conversations with people, like white women, particularly when the George Floyd protests were happening, and a lot of white liberals who could say, I just can't imagine a world without police. And, that's fair, but a lack of imagination is not a reason to keep letting bad things happen. And I think one way you can apply games to be sort of directly political rather than just sort of implicitly where you're kind of sharing your arguments, but maybe like a tool of helping people imagine a better world, that sort of thing is where like a political game could have a lot of use. And I did make a kind of anarchist sandbox game. The ash can is on my itch right now for free because I haven't had time to test it, but it's called No Good Deed, Bleed 10,000 Hit Points. It's sort of this like sandbox game where I have all these like floors, almost kind of a little black room style floors, but more like areas of, the institution and then the fields and all these things. And you and your friends share a pool of 10,000 hit points. And every second of real time that passes at the table, you take 1 damage. And there are ways of increasing that time. There are ways of spending those seconds. But the idea is you kind of just like the book itself says also like, there's all these tools and toys. Like there's a class that you can use a spinning top. And as long as that top is spinning, you can pause the timer and play. But if you're that player, you're just spinning that top the whole time. You gotta set the top down and start playing at some point, right? You gotta stop worrying about the time you have left and start doing something, right? Once you realize that this is all like limited, and once you come to terms with the fact that your game time is limited, that's when the game starts. It's sort of how I'm seeing it. I haven't tested it yet, but I'm really excited about it because it's got this cool concept, and it is very much a way. It's like, okay, there is like a corporate institution, and there is these other toys, and if I want to, really give people the tools to experience what that might be like, I don't know what's going to happen. That's one big critique of a lot of anarchist ideas. It's like, well, how would a lot of these things work if we don't have someone who's in charge of doing them? There are answers, of course, but it's also like, yeah, it is an issue. Like that's something I am always thinking of is like, how would we take care of this thing in a world without police, in a world without violence, state violence? How do we keep people safe? And that's a hard question. I don't know if I have an answer, but we have maybe games where the stakes are lower and the themes are a little bit more simplified, where it's like, this is a game about this specific thing versus where you're in real life and you're just trying to get food on the table. You don't, in my opinion, you don't necessarily need to worry too much about your ethical thing if you can't put food on the table. Just like do the work, you have to sell your labor to someone to eat, and that's not your fault. That is the system's fault. So you do what you got to do. If you got a good paying job doing something icky like I did, like you do it, then do something good with the savings and the money that you have. And yeah, so I think games can have a lot of different uses. They can be explicitly political, and I think it is a great medium for that. It's not really been explored much, but I think it's just as evocative, if not more like engaging than a novel can be, because you're doing it with other people, and other people are going to make choices that you wouldn't predict. And then you have to think about situations you've never been in. So, maybe we could do like a short one-shot play test on this channel of No Good Deed.
I was actually just going to suggest that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I legitimately, and like testing it live when I haven't tested it before, you can see like what doesn't work and what, like, I know that process is also something that people are really interested in, is like how do you actually improve your game, and like what does a playtest look like, and how do you know what's wrong, and how do you know this or that? And everybody has their own way of doing it, but I know that's a topic people are.
No, it's true. It's a kind of link. It's like in the design pipeline from like core concept to like mechanicalizing to writing up, the integument, all the like you said, the vegetables to make a product final, whether it's 24 pages or 300 pages or whatever. Yeah. And then there's eventually ... underpants gnomes, people play your game and have fun. But in the middle, I think there is this playtesting where you have to facilitate and figure out for yourself kind of how to GM it, or if it's GM-less, how do people read it? And maybe that means tweaking instructional text. But it would be fun to play that. It makes me think of like, you said, like, I really thought it was nice when you said games are economies of meaning. And you have to ask this question, what are you rewarding as a game designer? But you could also think of what you're saying as games are economies of attention, and what are you bringing people's kind of focus to at what points? And I love that idea that you've made a game where it's really like a very profound philosophical thought, but that, all our time is limited. And whenever we extend it, we're just extending it there's still some limit on that extension. So it kind of goes back to that idea of, okay, you're some sort of super sci-fi singularity, monster robot. I mean, at some point, you're standing around in a universe that's just cold dust, and you're like, well, I'm bored, And I think there's really deep questions about like how long, how do we gather as individuals our own thoughts, and then how do we sort of collectively inhabit groups, and how long do those things last? But for gaming groups, it is like you're saying, it's such a tight one-off, like, well, I only have 3 hours on this specific Saturday or whatever, right? Yeah. So it is like very limited, and it lets you explore that. I never thought of making a game about that constraint, but it sounds kind of fun. It might be like a lot of like ticking off marks, like, okay, one more second. But I'll be curious to try it.
We'll have to see how it plays. I have some idea, but no, yeah, I think a lot about mortality and stuff. I've had a lot of like health issues from a young age. So coming to terms with mortality is a big theme in my work as well. And as like with Hexfall, is like, what if you don't have that limitation or bleed or like no good deed? What if that limitation is the game? And I recently released This Blade Will Shatter on my Patreon, which is like a sort of samurai. It's a GM-less game. Everyone plays a spirit inside one sword with one kill left in it. And you kind of have to decide how that last kill goes as a group. And it's a sort of meditation on mortality, of course. And like, who is this person? Like, you build your wielder, you even build the final opponent that you're going to strike down, or you can choose to not strike down. There's a whole voting mechanic that goes on. But that game also is like a big meditation on mortality, with a lot of the interstitial pages being about that, and sort of my thoughts on that thing. And, also inspired by like Signalis and that sort of cycle and all those, like, what do you like, the nature of memory, the nature of life and choices, all this stuff I found very interesting, and their whole design aesthetic. I kind of was inspired for this other sword game. And yeah, I find that sort of the most, maybe not, if not the most interesting, the most compelling to me, because it sort of colors how I do everything in life. It's like sort of why I made 2 huge life decisions, like recently, where I moved 1,000 miles away from where I lived for 30 years and left my job of 7 years to try to do tabletop games full time, and also escape Ron DeSantis, because fuck Ron DeSantis. And we just wanted some trans rights, me and my partner, if that's okay. So we moved, and so, that mentality of this time that you're spending doing whatever it is that you're doing is time you'll not get back ever. And that thought is always on my mind, which, for better, for worse. And it does come through in a lot of my games, but it also, I think, is, I like living like this, because it means that I am not letting anyone waste my time. No one's going to respect your time more than you. And the time that you're not going to get back, people don't think about that, because life is relatively long, and they don't think about, a few moments here and there, but you got to think about that for yourself, so that that you're spending the time doing what you want to do. And if you're not spending the time doing what you want to do, there's probably some good reasons. A lot of times, like, you just got to work too much to have time to do what you want to do, and that is real, and that sucks. But sometimes it's, you're paying attention to one angle, like you're trying to make a game and you're going at it from one angle, just not producing anything. Maybe you need to try it from another angle and stop spending that time there. Your time could be spent more meaningfully in another direction. You could make progress and then come back to that thing. There's really no like forced order of how you need to develop a game, or how you need to learn an instrument, or how you need to build a business, or whatever you're trying to do. You got to do what feels good to your brain, because that's really going to give you that momentum to like keep cruising, and give you the momentum to eat your vegetables, which is you're gonna have to do it at some point. But I think people try to eat them too early, maybe in the meal. Get some goodness, get some mashed potatoes and gravy down there first, and then get some broccoli.
I love vegetables. I'm just going to throw it out there. And your metaphor is great. Nothing wrong with the metaphor.
Yes, I fully enjoy vegetables. We're like bought from a local farm thing lately. Nice. We got like a whole like package thing. It's like really cool, and we're getting like chard and apples and just like, we know Farmer Carol, it's like, it's really cool.
That's great. Well, it's almost an hour and a half in, so I feel like maybe we should, kind of wrap it up and really leave with thoughts of how people can support you in your work, especially now that you are full time, but also you're just doing so many fantastic things and are obviously kind of hitting a real stride in terms of really big ideas and games that are actually very approachable, even for like new to the hobby players. But Chris, did you have any last questions, thoughts, things you wanted to get to we haven't really covered with Lex?
No, I don't think so. I just, thanks for being here, Lex.
No, this was a blast. I'm happy to be on again. It sounds like I'm sure we could fill up plenty more time. We just got to the tips of the icebergs on a lot of these topics.
That's true.
I'd be happy
That's very true. We'll have to have you back on for 1,000 seconds. And I mean, I got to ask you here now, will you play test Dance Macabre, which also is a meditation on life and death?
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic.
That sounds awesome. I'm so down.
Nice.
Cool. So my name is Lex again. My little publishing business is called Titanomachy RPG. You can find all my details at titanrpg.com, TITANRPG.com. I just started Patreon in January, where tier 1, you can get early access and support and get updates on all my things. You can vote on which certain games you want to get for free. Tier 2 is where I do an RPG of the month. So if that sword game sounded good to you, tier 2 is the one to choose. You'll also get the January game, the February game, the March game, get the April game. You'll get May's game, which will come out in a couple of weeks from this recording. That's sort of the best way to support me, is so like ongoing income, so I can pay rent and vegetables. I can eat my vegetables, but you can also go to my itch page and get a bunch of stuff for pay what you want. A lot of stuff is free or really cheap. And also you can get a physical copy of Nighthawks at indiepressrevolution.com. They also take it to some cons. So maybe look for it at your next con. I know they were at like PAX East. Thank you so much. Links on the screen. That's amazing.
I've been dropping links into the chat. We can kind of, spam that when we market this episode. So.
Perfect. That's the best thing you can. If you're on Twitter, I'm back on Twitter as of this week. Tumblr. I'm even using Instagram now. I'm like, I'm using this. This is my full-time job. I'm using all of the socials. I'm trying to think. I'm going to try to start using the YouTube channel soon too. I'm thinking about doing a video about Caltrip Core to help people. It's like, hey, watch this and we'll just make a game together, or like help you through the process if like reading is difficult, or even just people who just want to watch a video and I'll explain the system a little more, how to use it, what I think the best practices, what strengths and weaknesses I think it has. I love that. So I'm on everything Titan. It's either Titan RPG or Titanomachy RPG everywhere.
Sweet. All right. Well,
awesome.
Thank you so much to the
thank you for having
prolific
me.
Lex. And thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for tuning in and or listening, whatever your preferred platform is.
Yeah, and you can support Why We Roll. We also have our Patreon. Stillfleet is what it is under, but it's the Stillfleet Studio, and Chris is working to create Why We Roll and also make games and sometimes illustrate some of my games. So we work together, and of course with another small group of artists here in New York City, where we're stuck, where everything costs a minimum of $30. Everything you do outside, they start taking money out of your wallet. Anyway, please support Lex on Patreon and consider $3 a month for helping us make the show. Lex, you're wonderful. Let's play games, and I have more to read. All right, that was Why We Roll.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Why We Roll. Our theme music is by the brilliant Sam Tyndall and Arpline. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You can find us on Twitch and what used to be Twitter at Why We Roll, and on Instagram at whyweroll.pod.
You can find out more about Dance Macabre at timespaceplace.itch.io/dance-macabre.
You can find out more about Stillfleet at stillfleet.com. Thanks for listening.
Every hero strikes out on their adventure for a different reason.
To prove myself worthy of my mother's praise.
To write my own story and discover who I really am.
To prove to my family that I am more than they believe me to be.
To revive the god that has chosen me.
But when the fragile balance of the world is in jeopardy, and sinister forces move in the darkness, heroes will be tested, pushed to their limits and beyond. And it will be left to them to determine if they are up to the task. There is a darkness rising. Will they be able to overcome the challenges and meet this evil head-on?
For my god.
For my story.
For my freedom.
For the world.
To restore the balance. Modified Role Season 2, The Chronicles of Erin, a D&D 5e actual play podcast. New season, new characters, new story. Find us on all the usual podcasting apps or at modifiedrole.com.